Practice Lead within the Canadian marketplace. And we have a really exciting session ahead of us today, really talking about property valuation and inside and outside the four walls. Property valuation is going through a lot of strategic change, and it's very exciting what's taking place. And today I'm joined with Sara Maffey as well as Nathan Brannen, and I'll get each of them to introduce themselves. And what we're going to do, our roadmap for today, is we're going to walk them through a series of questions that we've put together for them. We're going to have responses that they'll provide. And then if you have any questions, please include them in the chat. And at the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A. So with that, we'll kick it off with Sara. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks. I'm Sara Maffey. I'm the head of corporate strategy and business development at LocalLogic. And before joining LocalLogic, I worked in commercial real estate. I was doing a lot of asset repositioning and site selection work. So LocalLogic actually quantifies everything outside the four walls of the asset for every asset in the US and Canada. And we're doing that to drive real estate decision making.
Awesome. Thanks, Sara. And really glad to have you joining us today. We'll turn it over to Nathan.
Hello. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Nathan Brannen and I'm the Chief Product Officer at Restb.ai. My background has, for the past 10 years, has been in AI and really looking at how it can create new opportunities and to help people make better decisions, which led me to Restb about 4 years ago. And at Restb, we focus on the visual insights that you can gain by looking at a photo. And if we think about the US, where there's over 1 million property photos uploaded every day, there's a lot of hidden insights that are there for the taking.
It's exciting stuff. Thanks, Nathan, and thanks, Sara. So really want to kick off. So my background is I've spent a lot of time working with automation valuation models, data appraisals, and I'm really pleased to be able to host this today and to really move us forward. I'm excited about how locational data and actually how photo-based data actually changes the game, not only in property valuation, but in real estate and many other verticals, including property and casualty as well. So what I want to do is our first question that we really wanted to kick off was, we'll start with Nathan and really talk about how does property data and how does photo-based artificial intelligence, like what are the kind of data and insights that you're able to drive by doing that? And maybe even give people some insights around what is photo-based AI?
Absolutely. So, when we talk about photo-based AI, some people call it image recognition, some people call it computer vision. But you can think of it as how AI understands what's within an image. And it really does something quite similar to you as a human when you look at a photo. When you see a photo, you're able to understand a lot about what's in that photo, and you can train AI to basically do the exact same thing. So this can be simpler things like, all right, we're looking at a kitchen, we're looking at a living room. You can talk about the features that are present within a photo. And you can even do more complex things like understanding what is the style of a home, what is its quality, what is its condition, how can we score these things across a standard scale to really generate data sets that you can make decisions on. And all of this is built based on a lot of training that you put together to have the models work how you want them to work. And that gets quite interesting because with real estate, it is quite specific to where you're located. So Miami is very different than, say Boston or say New Mexico. And that's just within the US. We can get a lot crazier as you go further away in different countries. And so we spend a lot of time trying to understand, all right, what are the data points that people need that come out of these photos? And then we work to train and create very standardized models that can then be used at scale for people in the real estate vertical.
So you mean to tell me if I go on Pinterest today, I can pick my most favorite kitchen, I can upload it into the database, and you would be able to find identical matches?
I don't know about identical matches, but
very close.
Using that same process, yes, you'd be able to really, using a lot of the abstract look and feel of photos, you can find other properties or photos that are very similar.
So from a real estate perspective, this changes because you're no longer using data points in your search, you're actually using images in your search.
I think it's, it is a data point, it is an image, but I think it's just a natural way of people interacting with real estate. A lot of what we do with AI is trying to take processes that exist today and make them a lot simpler. So if you're someone who's looking at a home, you may go visit a bunch of other homes trying to find something that looks similar to the home that you like, or maybe your past home or your dream home. But you're doing that in a very inefficient way by going to every home in person or scrolling through all the photos on Zillow. What we want to do with AI is basically say, hey, we can look through these millions of photos all at once, and we can return you what you're looking for based on, whether it's similarities, whether it's, certain features, whatever it may be.
So similarities can help the appraiser in their selection of comparables, realtors in the selection of comparables, and possibly the end consumer around similar looking properties.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the areas that we see a lot. And, we talk to different people in the investment space and, in different areas. And one of the challenges they have is the manual effort it takes to truly review a property. And say you have a team that's looking at 100 properties a week. That's great. Maybe 5 of those properties really meet the criteria they're looking for. They're valid comps. But imagine that you could actually scan an entire market of 10,000 properties, return them the ones that the AI says are the most likely to be relevant for, say, a buy box or whatever it may be. And then you can have that human team analyze that same 100 properties, but find 50 that are good fits rather than just 5.
Super exciting what photo-based AI is able to do. So to move us from outside of the home now, let's bring in Sara to really give us some insights around the locational attributes as it relates to a property, because property valuation is predicated a lot on what is surrounding to the home, and it's one of the key features around it. So Sara, give us your perspective around, the data and the insights that LogoLogic is able to provide.
Absolutely. I mean, our models show that about 50% of the value of a property is actually based on location, not just what's inside the 4 walls itself. And I really like what Nathan kind of started off with there of using data to quantify the human experience, because I think we're doing that, as you said, outside the 4 walls of the asset. We're really, our location scores are the backbone of our products, and we're objectively understanding things like access to transportation, parks, greenery, retail, restaurants, and then things that you think of as being more subjective, like vibrancy and quiet, and our new wellness score. So we're really covering the full gamut of what you would experience boots on the ground on a site, but we're allowing folks to understand that through data, so they don't have to visit every site. I think this is really important, as we've seen a lot of investors looking in new markets where they might not be as familiar, or as Nathan was saying earlier about looking at portfolios or opportunities at scale. I think it's really important to start using data for that.
It's amazing. Tell me a little bit more about your wellness score. That's the first I've heard of it. I want to be more well. I'd love to do that. And how does that relate back to my home or the location?
Yes, I love it. Well, we just announced it, and it's really focusing on access to healthy behaviors and healthy food, things like that. So are you near yoga studios, gyms, that type of thing? Do you have access to parks, run, walk, kind of paths and trails? I think of the Atlanta Beltline, because I'm based here in Atlanta, is a perfect example of that. And then just healthy food options. I think a lot of times understanding that you're going to have access to those healthier grocery stores, farmers markets, things like that.
I guess the flip side with locational data and taking a Canadian perspective is you'd be able to give us proximity to the hockey rink, the beer store, and maybe the unwellness scores. But do you have that powerful data to do that as well? Would you not?
Yes, we can add that to our roadmap. I think that sounds like a really fun new score.
Oh, so it would definitely apply for some of the Canadian markets, I can tell you that. So moving us along, and COVID-19 has been a global phenomenon. It's impacted every market in the world. And maybe we'll start with you, Nathan, around how have you seen like the real estate and the valuation industries really change as a result of the pandemic, and really talk about the positive and sort of the transformational changes that you've seen take place?
It's been a pretty, I think, crazy couple of years. And I think there's some trends that were already happening before the pandemic started that have been accelerated quite a lot by what's happened with the pandemic. So if you look at something like an iBuyer, this concept had existed before the pandemic happened, but it obviously became more front and center over the past couple of years. And I think a lot of that also applies to, say, institutional investors. You're seeing a lot more activity there. In different markets, you're seeing anywhere from 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 homes that are being bought, all being bought by institutional investors. And this can be from things like the lower interest rates that have happened. But the impacts of this, that and the iBuyers is creating a very new paradigm, I think, within real estate, and particularly in the valuation space. According to Redfin, in 2020, the majority of home buyers put in an offer without ever seeing the home that they were purchasing. And that can be related to the fact that, homes are not staying on the market as long, prices are appreciating so quickly. And there's a lot of different factors that go into that. But the impact of that is you need to be able to make decisions more quickly. If you're someone who is making investment decisions, you need to make sure that you're managing your risk so you don't end up like Zillow and quite underwater in the amount of money that you've deployed. And I think both what LocalLogic and Restb does is try to generate this data that's actionable, that's consumable, and that can really aid in this changing world of real estate and particularly the investment vertical.
So when you're seeing these overheated markets, I guess the demand for data and insights becomes more important than ever.
I think it does. I mean, I think that things are moving so quickly, and you've seen investors even start to look at asset types that they weren't investing in previously. They're really starting to expand. And so when those opportunities come up, you need to be able to move quickly, and using data is a really great way to more efficiently assess opportunities, I think.
I would agree. At Accenture, we've been beta testing the Oculus and the virtual reality software. It's do you really see that? And I've been beta testing it in meetings and various aspects. And the first sort of thought that came to mind was, oh my gosh, this would really apply in real estate. Like how could you not do the walkthrough now through that? Are you guys seeing, your data and your solutions playing a role in that as we move down into the future?
I think, oh, go ahead, Nathan.
No, I'll use Sarah.
I was just going to say, I think that that kind of mirrors even the virtual touring that you've seen really take off, especially on the commercial side over the last couple of years, where that was obviously happening prior to the pandemic. But just, I think that it speaks to the industry's increased use of or comfort level in using data. And for me, that's a very good thing, because I think prior to the pandemic, folks were kind of trying to dip a toe into it. They weren't quite sure. But I've seen even in the last 6 months, I think that there's so many firms that have started to develop their own platforms or the ability to use APIs, and that's just going to increase.
Sure, thanks. Nathan?
Yeah, I think it's really just part of this trend of greater adoption of technology, greater leveraging of technology. You're seeing a lot of new entrants, a lot of VC money come into this space that's having people push more aggressively on these new ideas and these new ways of doing things than they have in the past. And you combine that with, millennials becoming one of the larger home buyers or segments. And all of these things just are contributing to quite a fast change. I think, the past 2 years, we've seen greater change than maybe the past 2 decades in some ways, with just the change in how things are done and the amount of just innovation and new ideas that are coming into this world.
Thanks. When we look at the real estate market, we tend to look at, you have the consumers, and we're talking single family residential. You have the consumer segment that is buying. You've had the real estate investor segment. And I think a big one that we've seen now is the institutional / pension companies are starting to look and get into the residential segment. And do you think that's going to dramatically change the real estate market with this well-capitalized institutions being able to really drive change? Nathan, what do you think about that?
I definitely think it's going to change things. I'm, split on, whether all those changes are necessarily a good thing for the average home buyer. But the reality is, whether you're a fan of it or not, is that it's happening. And, there's funds that are being set up that are deploying incredible amounts of capital to purchase properties, to, spend a lot of money acquiring data to make the best decisions on these properties. And we're seeing, I guess, and this is probably something that I think Sarah's seeing as well, you're seeing a lot of regional players who were really comfortable maybe investing in the Metro Atlanta market. And, they're really good at understanding what worked there and what didn't work there. And they're going, man, I'm doing great with this $50 million fund that I have, but so-and-so wants to give me $500 million. All right, I can't find those properties in Atlanta. How do I expand out? And how do I do that with the same success that I'm having in my, backyard or in my home market? And, real estate changes so much as you move to different markets. So I think you're going to see some cases like with a Zillow where, maybe it isn't as simple as it seems. But what we want to help is just, all right, how can we provide data for both, those companies make better decisions, but also the individuals and the agents to help their home buyers make better decisions as well.
I love that
Sure.
because I think on both our consumer and more analytical side of our products, we have the ability to understand markets. Maybe you start in Atlanta because that's where you're comfortable, and really start to understand with our heat maps and our location scores how that area matches based on those different factors. And then you can take that anywhere in the US and Canada and look for similar areas. One of my favorite parts about our location scores is we showed at different scales. So we're showing a score at the actual site itself, the neighborhood and the city. So you might think, oh, this seems like a great area for walkability, but then you get that context of understanding how it fits within the market itself. And I think that's really helpful as you're trying to expand into new geographies.
Yeah, one of the questions that always comes to mind, and I'm also a real estate broker. I'm licensed, and we question a lot at Accenture is that role of the realtor and how they're impacted with the data and the technology. I'd like to get each of your perspectives around, how you see that, really supporting the realtors within the marketplace. So we'll start with you, Sarah.
I think that what we've seen over the last couple of years is, as Nathan alluded to earlier, folks are doing a lot of their own research before they even reach out to a realtor or broker. And so having our data on a site so that you can do your own research and understand the context of different neighborhoods or different cities before you even speak to someone, I think that really helps. We're also adding stickiness to sites and just giving a lot more context to actual listings. So I think that has really helped quite a bit.
I agree. Nathan?
I think it's, it's not meant to replace the realtor. I think there's certainly a place, and there's a lot of things that AI can do, and there's a lot of things that it can't. And so if you're a home buyer that's searching on a portal, you're thrown so much information. A wellness score is great. A noise score is great. Like, all these things are very valuable, but it can be an overload for someone who's buying a home for the first time or buying a home for the second time, but it's been 20 years since they bought their last home. And I think the job of the realtor is really to understand, how that information sits within its market. So I love what LocalLogic's doing there. We're looking to do very similar things to say, this home is nice. It could even be the nicest home in its neighborhood, but that's different if in that particular zip code, it's actually at the bottom end of that spectrum and the quality of that home. All this is incredibly important context to help someone determine where they want to live next. But it's really helpful to have a realtor who has all this, insight and experience to help guide them through, what are the implications of that particular purchase based on, what they're seeing. And I see that being, something that will continue. And what we're doing is providing data to make that easier for the realtor. So, they don't have to go drive through a neighborhood to get a feel for, what that area's noise score is. They can have that insight and then be able to, translate it into words and understanding that that home buyer will be able to relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that mirrors like just the ability to put that information in the home buyer's hands or the renter's hands, but also like our one-click reports make that really easy for the realtor as well to just in less than a minute get all of that information.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm glad you both supported my view, because I think it really enhances the role of the realtor, because now they help the client really understand and learn all of this new information. There's more information than ever, and I think it's a really great opportunity for the realtor to really showcase their knowledge and expertise by leveraging those insights and the data. And we're seeing that with photo-based AI helping with architectural styles and the visualization. So the clients may be looking at less homes, but the role of the realtor has actually become more important than ever with understanding these insights. As we start to look at, the marketplace even more, and with how does your data really help with looking at real estate opportunities and the assessment of these opportunities, in terms of location, risk assessment, and looking across a wide geography? Let's start with you, Sarah. You're the locational data expert. So maybe give us, and I know you touched on it a little bit earlier around heat maps, but like, how does the average person, like I live in Canada, sure, I want to buy a home in Atlanta. Like, how do you empower somebody like myself to say, okay, what about the Atlanta market or other markets?
I think it's understanding at the start what's important to you, like what are you looking for from a quality of life standpoint, but also on the risk side. So we also have partnered with climate checks. So if climate risk is something that's important to you to consider for the long term, that's data that we're making available via our MLS partnerships and in our own platform. So realtors could have access to that as well. But I think really starting to understand how neighborhoods are going to change over time is another big factor. And that's on our roadmap. So we've been collecting data for over 6 years now on all of our location scores, and we understand how neighborhoods have changed. And we're working to put that information, those insights in the hands of our users so they can start to understand the risk of location in the future as well. You certainly, I think that whether it's a commercial asset or a home, it's a major investment. And so you want to be able to understand what that ROI is going to be, whatever your hold period is going to be.
So the power of the locational data is like, would you look at it like a macro perspective? You're able to really zero in on the key things that are important in order to bring you one maybe concentric circle closer to where you're getting to. Is that how you guys sort of view your solution?
Our solution is really flexible. So you can start off by understanding it at the market level. I think it's really interesting. We've seen on the consumer facing side that using our heat maps, for example, folks actually start to look about 50% further out than they were originally even considering, because they start to see areas that match the lifestyle that they were looking for, maybe a little bit beyond where they originally thought they were going to be able to find it. So I think that that's one way that we can add value.
Yeah, I think it makes, really good sense to be able to just understand how you move from a macro to right down to the locational is key and zero in. We look at real estate boards and I'm a huge fan of the US and how the real estate boards do it. In Canada, we're a locked market. So only brokers and the consumer has very little access to this data, which seems to be a miss. I'm amazed how Local Logic and Restb are working with these real estate boards to really advance the industry to the next level, which I think Canada has been missing. And we're very envious sitting from our side. Nathan, maybe I'll turn it over to you around the boards and sort of that perspective.
Yeah, I think, us coming in as a company that, was more of a technical company, more of an AI company with our experience and understanding how to extract these insights of image, we've had to learn a lot about the landscape of real estate and how that works with the different boards, with the associations, with who has access to what and who can do what. And it's been interesting navigating that. I think we've, over the years, there's been a lot more reception to the type of things that we're doing and the idea that, all of this can be great for, for the agents, for the, consumers who are buying and selling homes. And that it's one of those things that a thing that we commonly hear, and I don't know how much you guys hear this at Local Logic, is what you guys do just makes so much sense. Like everyone's going to be doing that in 3 years, 5 years. And I think if you have that mindset, then it becomes, all right, well, why are we not doing it now? What are we waiting for if it just makes sense to improve this entire real estate process? And we're starting, I think, to see a lot more acceptance of that and adoption. And now we're even getting those conversations where, the people we're speaking with are thinking bigger than even we're thinking. We're like, oh, wow, that's a great idea. Let's go take that back and see what we can do.
Yeah, I think we're in the next stage now of where it's really all starting to come together with the locational data. And now you guys have been on the market for some time now with photo-based. It does make sense. And it's got so many different uses and applications. So we've sort of taken in the first half of our time really building up around why you have the importance of locational data. How do you actually understand the insides of the home and even the exterior, being able to assess with photo-based AI what this looks like? I think we're going to start to move a little bit more around, talking about valuation models and really maybe give us some insights around the challenges that investors, encounter when building their automated valuation models. And we've seen Zillow. Zillow's been around for a long time. I'm a big advocate of it because in Canada, there is no Zillow equivalent around the real estate. So Nathan, maybe give us your insights around, building out, or actually let's flip it up. Let's go with Sara. Let's start with you around, because that actually takes you from the market moving in, and then we'll take Nathan in directly onto the property.
So I'm sorry, what's your question?
So the question was really around how in terms of valuation models, what are the challenges that you're seeing with companies in the US or around the globe with building their valuation models today?
I think that it's just really hard to get location data that's objective. A lot of times what we're seeing is that our users are used to relying on their own personal experience in a market, or maybe their broker's experience in a market. And yes, there's things like walk score and but they're only covering a certain portion of the experience. And our algorithms, I think it's worth noting that we were founded by urban planners. So really, like, at our roots, we understand what makes neighborhoods livable and what makes cities, match that quality of life that folks are looking for. And what I think is really cool is being able to go from the city level all the way down to that specific site. So we're really bringing you to the front door where Nathan takes over. And that's why I think we have heard that, because Nathan said before, what you guys are doing just makes so much sense. We've definitely heard that. We're working with MLSs, and we're also working on the commercial side. So it's just an objective way of actually understanding the whole ecosystem that you're experiencing as a human in a place.
So an example is, so generating a value on a property is not really complicated. In our consulting practice, we've helped a number of people generate the value. Generating a value is easy. Generating a really accurate value, I would say, is complicated. So when you look at property valuation and you come up with the value, do you think that the new AVM models are going to start to look like appraisers, where they make deductions based on climate score, on locational scores, maybe positive attributes or negative attributes based on locations? Like, are you seeing the trend in the industry where companies are looking at it from that perspective, like that appraiser mindset? So you're using the old clipboard, but now you're actually doing it with your AI models.
I think that people were doing that to some extent before, but they weren't acknowledging it because they were doing it in a more subjective way. But absolutely, I mean, I think that that's absolutely the direction that we're going in. The other thing I would add to that is just also understanding how those things are going to change over time. So you might understand it today, and I think that that's, the snapshot that you have, but that's why our predictive scoring is going to be such a game changer, because that's what's really going to drive your ROI over time, is how that neighborhood's going to change around you.
Yeah, we've been at Accenture, we do a lot of consulting with the government and a lot of large companies. And one of the ones I've been personally working on is climate change. And it just has such a big social impact around the scoring, because if today you identify a house and you say, well, this has a high flood potential now that it didn't. So that could cause maybe the homeowner can't get property and casualty insurance, or the mortgage not renewed. So there's a whole bunch of social issues that come with the data now that we hadn't thought of. And how do you think we're going to be able to handle or navigate through these things? And I know it's a tricky question, and you probably don't have the answer, but I just think it's awesome that the data is going to show it, but it's going to create a new problem called, what do we do now? So if you identify my house is in the floodplain or a fire risk, it's good to know. And maybe it's the education factor that's the solution. Is that where you see the power of your data is around the education?
I think it is part of that. I mean, it's really empowering people, whether they're an investor or a home buyer, to understand that risk at the very beginning. It brings up questions of, should we be building in certain high risk areas to begin with? I know just in my past life working in disaster recovery that came up over and over again as you had to rebuild in flood zones. So I think that it brings up all sorts of social issues. I think there's other cool things that our data can help with on that side as well, and just identifying areas of opportunity, like, hey, mixed use developer, this area could really use access to a grocery store, or empowering cities to understand where their services are needed with rapid transit or parks and things like that. So I think there's a lot of social equity that comes from our data as well, which is really exciting.
Yeah, social data models are on the rise. Like we've been working, with the government around affordable housing and how do you use predictive models around how do we, how do you put vulnerable groups and a lot of it is locational data that we're using today. So super powerful. So Nathan, from your side, how about the inside of the building? So we know the locational data is used to maybe adjust up or down a property value. What are the challenges you're seeing on the interior of the property or even the physical exterior of the building?
Yeah, it's interesting hearing a lot of what Sara said, just because there's so many parallels to what we're seeing with what we're doing within that property or looking at that property, on its own. And one of the big things that we run into, looking at the data is that it's so important that the way you're collecting data is standardized across the country. And even with things that are in the tax record, we have AVM or valuation clients that say, yeah, we know that, half of the counties have terrible data for these data points, but you see it in there. And so you assume it's correct. But then when you look at the scores that say a Local Logic provides or that we provide, there's a lot of, hey, what if it's wrong? What if it's not right? And I think that's correct. You do want to be cautious with these things, but I also think you want to be aware of, what is the actual risk and, where is it maybe acceptable to use? And so I'll give some examples. With AVMs, we know there's not a non-trivial amount of AVMs are scanning the listing text or the listing remarks to pull out, words that may identify, all right, is it a fix and flip opportunity? Is it more luxurious? And if you think about having, 1.5 million agents in the US, all marketing their properties in different ways, and then trying to take out that text to then apply a condition score that's a component within your AVM, I think what we're doing becomes a lot less scary by providing kind of a standardized model that works across all these properties. On the flip side, with something like an appraisal in some of these more regulatory areas, I completely understand you not wanting to get your loan denied because of what a computer said. But at the same time, there's still an opportunity there because, one, if you were someone who had your home appraised and they said that it was in disrepair and our model said that, well, it's not in disrepair at all, it's actually in quite good shape, you'd want that to be flagged through a quality control process. And, you're able to 1000x, 10,000x the amount of quality control you can do by looking to see where there's the big deviations between what an AI model says and what was actually recorded in an appraiser. And, you can also start getting into things like bias and, some of the things that have been in the news recently. I think Fannie Mae just released a 50+ page report talking about trying to eliminate a lot of the bias that is disproportionately affecting certain minority groups. And I think that AI and this standardization and this, broader look at scale of how we do things can really help, lead to better decisions, lead to better processes, and help the industry as a whole overall.
So in terms of looking at a photo, you mentioned earlier, Nathan, that you're able to give it a score. So would that be a score based on quality? So an appraiser in the US would have a condition score between 1 and 6. Are you saying that the technology today would be able to give you similar scoring like an appraiser's methodology?
Correct. So when we first started, we were starting more in the AVM investor space. And for this, we kind of had an all-encompassing score that looked at, the quality of the property, the condition, the potential, if I put 100K into this property, am I more likely to get 120K out, or am I more likely to get, 250K out? A lot of things that, look at the property, and in the case of potential, also look at the surrounding area. But as we've started moving into the different use cases, there are different people that have different requirements. So the appraiser world's a great one because Fannie Mae says, hey, you need to describe a property on its condition from C1 to C6, and you need to describe it on its quality from Q1 to Q6. So, in order to work in that space, we really need to match the standards that exist. So now we have a C1, C6 model that maps that, as perfect as we are able to get for their scores. And we're working on a quality model to match that use case. But even if you look at another industry like the rental space, the way that condition works in, say, rentals is a little bit different because, if you're renting a property out, it's more about, all right, I want a property that I don't have to do any work to be able to rent out if I'm an SFR investor. The way we would want to score that would be slightly different than if we're looking at a property that someone's going to move into and live, because they may be more worried about, all right, what are the things that are near the end of their life that I'm going to have to upgrade or are more likely to upgrade based on, where this home is in its particular market, kind of the expectations of what someone living in that house would potentially have. And so I just see us going deeper and deeper and more granular and granular as we start to understand the different use cases of these different players. But the score itself, and I think Local Logic's done such a great job with these scores. They're so important because it's so much easier to consume that score than it is to consume, okay, well, 3/4 of the home had carpet and that carpet was about 10 years old. And, all the other homes in this neighborhood had hardwood floors. Like that's the process that we need to solve to make it easy to make decisions on this type of data.
And I think just adding to that, like you're talking about all these different use cases of the home, like whether it's, SFR or short-term rental or someone's actual primary home. And that's one of the reasons I really like the ecosystem of scores that we have, because I think someone actually mentioned this earlier in the chat. It is about like understanding the persona of who's going to be using that space and what they're looking for. And on our end, what they're looking for out of the location of that home. And that's why, we have now almost 18 scores when we add wellness. And so people can really use whatever scores make the most sense for what they're looking for. So I think a lot of times people will run a regression on their past portfolio to understand which of our scores are actually correlated the most with creating the value that they're looking to create out of that asset. And that's just one way to start using that objective look at location to create value.
So when you look at the real estate process, you buy the home and then the appraiser has to go and value on behalf of the mortgage company. So based on what I've heard between Local Logic and now with Restb, it looks like the appraiser's role could change dramatically now that they maybe don't even need to go to the property anymore. Do you think that's a trend that could realistically take place? Start with you, Sarah.
Absolutely. I think Clear Capital just posted a really interesting article on desktop valuations. And I mean, I think especially over the last 2 years, as we've talked about, so much has been happening virtually. And if you can understand the neighborhood around a site virtually, then why not do that, as at least as a first pass, especially if you're looking in SFR when you have these massive portfolios of scattered sites. It's really, you basically have to do that to be efficient. Otherwise, it's just going to take way too much time to do that manually and in person.
Makes sense. I led an appraisal management division, and appraisers getting bit by dogs is more common than you actually think. So appraisers would probably be glad to be staying at home and doing more desktops and comparative assessments. Nathan, what's your view around the role of the appraiser?
Right. And so, I mean, I think it was last week that some new regulation came in from Fannie saying that I think up to 20% of homes are now eligible for a desktop appraisal. And as I understand it, that's related to one, there's just more need for appraisers with refis, with more home purchases. The appraisers themselves are an industry that is, not getting younger. It's one that there's not a ton of people moving into. So how can we make each of those appraisers and all of their, careers of experience be more efficient? And so if you can save an hour trip both ways to a home and allow someone to do that via a desktop using the technology and tools that are now available, I think you can get a lot more value out of each of those appraisers and make this whole system work more efficiently. At the same time, I want to stress that I don't think we can replace today, and I don't think, in 5 years we can completely replace what's being done with an appraiser's in where they sit with, valuing the collateral you have in a loan. But we can certainly make their jobs a lot easier. We can certainly make them more consistent, and we can certainly help flag areas where, that mark has been missed, which is quite relevant. And, I was speaking with someone in Toronto, and with, the appreciation in home prices now, an appraiser's job's kind of impossible. How do you get to the number that, you need to get to for what that house was sold at? It's very hard based on kind of the way that property worked 12 months ago or 6 months ago. And so as you start having these markets moving so quickly, as you have to look at comparables where the prices may be so out of whack with what, would have been the case even 3 months ago, how can we help figure out what to do and what to make sense, and not to have a huge systemic risk put into the system, that's bad for everyone.
I loved how you aligned, stating that the appraisers around efficiency rather than extinction. And I 110% agree with you. I think you're right. With an aging demographic around appraisers, how do we make this segment much more efficient and really improving how they can do it, and speed, right? Improving the overall transactional time, which I think is a really important thing. So if we put things into perspective, if you're a realtor today or running a brokerage, you're quite excited around what locational data can do when combined with Restb and photo-based artificial intelligence. If you're an appraiser today, you're viewing the new tech and this disruption not as a big change to my business, but actually making me more efficient and moving forward. As both of you tend to look forward in the industry, like what are other exciting things that you're seeing in the marketplace that would be helpful to maybe our audience to see what's coming down the pipe? You're both innovators, you're both on the leading edge. What else is coming that should be really exciting when we look at it? Let's start maybe with you, Sara.
Sure, I think I've mentioned it before, but what I'm really excited about is on our roadmap of being able to predict how neighborhoods are going to change. Pardon me. And I think that that's going to be the biggest game changer, being able to really understand how maybe one change in a neighborhood is going to be the catalyst that makes all the values go up. So I think that that's going to be a really important addition that we'll be adding. The other piece of it is sustainability. I mean, we kind of touched on social equity before, but I think from the investor side and from the consumer side, people want to understand their environmental and social impacts, and they're starting to actually consider that in their home buying choices. And certainly from institutional investors, ESG reporting is just becoming, required at this point. A lot of the frameworks for that are still sort of working themselves out, and we're really focusing on Restb as sort of our framework that we're using our data. I think Nathan was kind of mentioning with Fannie Mae, creating scores that matched that framework. So we're doing the same as we approach sustainability with Restb, where they're looking to understand projects' impact on a community, the livability, the access to transportation, and we have scores for all of those things. So I think just being able to package that and make it more automated for folks to understand the environmental and social impacts of location choices is going to be really important.
Great. How about you, Nathan?
With us, we're looking a lot at, all right, a lot of what we do now is inside the four walls of our home, but how can we take what we know about the inside of the four walls for an entire market and provide those insights, as that snapshot in time, as well as, the trends that we're looking at. And as an example there, let's say we know that in a particular zip code, there's 3 modern homes that are sold every month. I'm now a realtor working with my client, and they really are dead set on a modern home in this particular market. Rather than updating, Zillow every day and seeing what's there, it's a lot better if you can say, hey, right now, what you want isn't really available. There's going to be higher demand for it because it's below what it should be. What if we were actually to look at other properties that could be converted into what you want, and completely reframe that discussion very early on in that process with respect to what decision that person is going to make and what that would look like. And I think these types of decisions are able to be made easier when you have this type of data, when you have that snapshot. Another example would be, say you're a new developer and Inman.com is telling you, hey, white kitchens are out or white kitchens are in or whatever it may be. That's all helpful, but that doesn't really apply across every market in the US. So if we can give that type of insight of saying, hey, here's what has been trending up over the past 12 months with regards to what people like, this is what you need to build because this is what the market's asking for. You can basically drive these efficiencies that are, maybe not that big of a deal in the big scheme of things, but, to each of these businesses, to each of these, decision makers in these processes, these are all relevant and things that they're doing on, maybe gut feel or, a hunch that isn't going to be as reliable as something backed by data over the long term. Good
response. So now that you've both, really educated our audience around the importance of locational data, the importance of property data, specifically in photos on the inside and the outside. I think a big question, and I see it a lot in our consulting practice with our clients, is like okay, so what's next? What do I do? And how should I put all of this information into context? And I think the right way to look at it when you're talking about property, locational, and about unique properties is, one, you have to determine in your business, one, how important is property data to your business? And if it's a core competency into your business, then it's something that strategic investment you should be looking to make, because that causes disruption in a lot of markets if you're not investing into there. So as just from an outside consultant perspective, that's a really key piece, is how important is it to your business, and will your business be disrupted if you're actually not making investment into these future technologies and changes and advancements. So with that, I wanted to thank Nathan and thank Sara. Did you guys want to add anything else before we maybe lead into some questions?
One quick thing on what you just said that we try to explain when we're speaking with people. With these types of technology, it's not like we're giving you something that you had before, but it's better. Oftentimes, what we're providing to you is an insight that was infeasible before. You can't have someone go look at every home in the market constantly to understand the state of that market. But with something like computer vision, that's now more possible. There's similar things with the location analytics that are provided by Local Logic. With this new type of data, it's not the same as, all right, I have these existing property data sets that people have been working with for the past 20 years. No, this is a completely new data set that has completely new implications. We're seeing it move the needle with, say, valuations in a way that is very meaningful, such that really nobody wants to talk about what they're doing with it because of the competitive advantage they think it gives them. And so I think you have to start thinking, all right, this isn't what we've been planning for the past 5 years, because we didn't know that this was going to be possible at this point. So instead, what are the implications of, all right, I can send or I can get the insights on every property in a market as if I were walking through them. What does that change with my business model? And that's going to be different for each player that fits in the real estate vertical. But you have to be asking yourself that question and the other questions around these new innovations within this industry, because it'll fundamentally change, your business model, what your future looks like, and where you need to be investing now, because it's going to be too late if you wait a year or two.
Yeah, we view property data and locational data as the game changer. And this is going to be the game changer in the real estate vertical. It's going to be the game changer in the appraisal and the valuation. And it's even going to trickle in the property and casualty. So it's amazing how much investment is being made around property data today and driving that core differentiator in the marketplace. So awesome. Yeah. Sara, was there anything you wanted to?
I was just going to say, I think you're pointing out really like the risk of not using data. I think it's, on our consumer facing side, we have about 90% market share on home search sites in Canada. We're growing in the US. So it's kind of like you're almost too late. Like you need to get on board with this. And, we've talked about all the different values of using location intelligence on the commercial side. But I think it's just, we're getting to a place where data is not just a nice to have. You have to use data to actually compete in the market today.
I agree. Thank you, Sara, and thank you, Nathan. You guys have given us a lot of incredible insights today, and super helpful to give us that sideline of what the future looks like and how we need to look at data today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Sara.
So we do have a couple questions that have come through. First question, between inside and outside the four walls, where do you see the gaps are in data and quality of information? And what changes do you see in data as economic conditions change? Would anybody like to take that one for us?
These are some big questions baked into that.
Yes, I can repeat if you need.
Nathan, do you want to take a first stab at it? I have some.
The first half I can answer a little bit better. The second half I'm not quite sure how to answer. But if we're looking at the quality of the data versus inside or outside. I think it's evolving. And so as, Sara mentioned, perhaps the majority of a home's price is dictated by its location. And that location, things like lot size are a little bit easier and more consistent. So even if it's the majority of the price, I think there's maybe a greater risk and potential for impact based on other things where the data is maybe less consistent, even if it's a smaller part of that overall, home's value. But on the flip side, one of the big things with Fannie Mae is making sure that, the dimensions are very consistent for all the homes that are being appraised. And if you look at Canada, I think this is very inconsistent. But what that also means is that if there is any home where the dimensions are incorrect, that can have an incredibly large impact on that home's value. So, there's two components. One is the overall risk with this data versus what is the potential risk on an individual property if that data is incorrect.
I think the other piece of it is like some of the gaps that exist are having access to all of this data. I mean, what we've talked about is a huge undertaking to actually gather all of that information. We have demographic information, and I think that kind of gets to understanding like economic changes in a neighborhood. But I think, Nathan, both of our sets of data work together, as we've talked about, to create the actual value of the home. And to piece that together, I think the data analytics piece, it's not just having data, it's having actionable insights from that. And so I think both of us kind of add that aspect to understanding, what do I do with this information? How does it actually impact the decision I'm trying to make, and making it more usable? So to me, that's kind of the gap that I think a lot of practitioners and home searchers are experiencing right now.
Okay, awesome. We actually have some like great chat happening. Patrick said, changing market conditions would affect the importance of what data a customer would prioritize. Lots of this is very informative. I have another question. How can a county assessor use these technologies to be more effective?
I think it's one thing to just have the data be available. We haven't really gone out into the public side of things yet. It's definitely on our roadmap to start empowering those decisions and understandings. But there's no reason if the private side is using this kind of data to understand values, then it makes sense that the flip side would also find value in it.
Mm-hmm. We do have another question. I'm going to try to like condense it down. Basically, how the benefits of the adoption of this, how does it make appraisers more efficient in a true sense? There is like some concern that this switch would affect like the fees appraisers are able to charge, like they're expected to put out more volume, but since they're not physically having to be there, that their fees would be reduced. So how would this make appraisers more efficient in a true sense is the question.
I saw this question and it's come up a lot recently, and I think it's a really good question. And the way I look at this is maybe from a higher level view of saying it doesn't make sense for, part of the price that you're paying for an appraisal to be baked into the fact that there might be 2 hours worth of driving involved to get that appraisal done. And that's not the type of work that we want to, have baked in, that then there's a margin on top of that's being paid by consumers. So I think, the bigger benefit, of course, is for this whole process to become more efficient. And I think there are going to be appraisers who adapt to this well and are able to use these tools to, work more efficiently and work in this new way of working. And I think there's going to be others that are very used to maybe the way that things worked before, and it's going to be more difficult. I think it's the same way with, the way realtors work. There's a lot of realtors that 20 years ago now wouldn't have really had the opportunity to be successful because of the way that business was done 20 years ago. But now with how they can leverage things like social media and market for themselves and build their brand at a much, much younger age, they're able to be successful. And I think that you have to adapt to how things are changing to take advantage of where technology is driving things. But it's a very good question and very fair question.
Excellent. Does anybody have any final thoughts? I don't have any other questions for you guys. So before we wrap up today, anything else you wanted to add or contribute?
I just wanted to encourage people to check out both of our websites. Ours is locallogic.co if you want to find out any more information on the wide range of products that we offer.
And you can find us at Restb.ai.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you so much for the active chat. That was honestly my favorite. I love that. But everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.